21. The Test of the Great Bow. Like many unwilling princesses of myth, fairy tale, and legend, Penelope proposes an impossible task for those who wish to marry her. By doing so, she causes the bloody events that lead to the restoration of her true husband. The test will involve Odysseus's huge bow, which no one could string except Odysseus himself. Odysseus had left his bow home in Ithaca 20 years ago. Now the queen reached the storeroom door and halted. Here was an oaken still, cut long ago, and sanded clean and bedded true. Four square the door jambs, and the shining doors were set by the careful builder. Penelope untied the strap around the curving handle, pushed her hook into the slit, aimed at the bolts inside, and shot them back. Then came a rasping sound as those bright doors the key had sprung gave way, a bellow like a bull's vaunt in a meadow, followed by her light footfall entering over the plank floor. Herb-scented robes lay there in chests, but the lady's milk-white arms went up to lift the bow down from a peg in its own polished bow case. Now Penelope sank down, holding the weapon on her knees, and drew her husband's great bow out, and sobbed, and bit her lip, and let the salt tears flow. Then back she went to face the crowded hall, tremendous bow in hand, and on her shoulder hung the quiver spiked with coughing death. Behind her maids bore a basket full of axe heads, bronze and iron implements for the master's game. Thus in her beauty she approached the suitors, and near a pillar of the solid roof she paused, her shining veil across her cheeks, her maids on either hand, and still then she spoke to the banqueters. My lords, hear me. Suitors indeed, you recommended this house to feast and drink in day and night, my husband being long gone, long out of mind. You found no justification for yourselves, none except your lust to marry me. Stand up then. We now declare a contest for that prize. Here is my lord Odysseus's hunting bow. Bend and string it if you can. Who sends an arrow through the iron axe helve's sockets 12 in line? I join my life with his, and leave this place my home, my rich and beautiful bridal house, forever to be remembered, though I dream it only. Many of the suitors boldly try the bow, but not a man can even bend it enough to string it. Two men had meanwhile left the hall, swineherd and cowherd in companionship, one downcast as the other. But Odysseus followed them outdoors, outside the court, and coming up gently, said, You herdsman, and you too, swineherd, I could say a thing to you, or should I keep it dark? No, no, speak, my heart tells me. Would you be men enough to stand by Odysseus if he came back? Suppose he dropped out of a clear sky as I did. Suppose some god should bring him. Would you bear arms for him, or for the suitors? The cowherd said, Ah, let the master come. Father Zeus grant our old wish. Some courier guide him back. Then judge what stuff is in me and how I manage arms. Likewise Eumaeus fell to praying all heaven for his return, so that Odysseus, sure of these, told them, I am at home, for I am he. I bore adversities, but in the 20th year I am ashore on my own land. I find the two of you alone among my people, longed for my coming. Prayers I never heard except your own, that I might once come again. So now what is in store for you I'll tell you. If Zeus brings down the suitors by my hand, I promise marriages to both, and cattle and houses built near mine, and you shall be brothers in arms of my Telemachus. Here, let me show you something else, a sign that I am he, that you can trust me. Look, this old scar from the tusk wound that I got boar hunting on Parnassus. Shifting his rags, he bared the long gash. Both men looked and knew, and threw their arms around the old soldier, weeping, kissing his head and shoulders. He as well took on the man's head and each to kiss, then said, To cut it short, else they might weep till dark. Break off, no more of this. Anyone at the door could see and tell them. Drift back in, but separately at intervals after me. Now listen to your orders. When the time comes, those gentlemen to a man will be dead against giving me bow or quiver. Defy them, Eumaeus. Bring the bow, and ask, put it in my hands there at the door. Tell the women to lock their own door tight. Tell them if someone hears the shock of arms or groans of men in the hall or court, not one must show her face, but keep still at her weaving. Philetus, run to the outer gate and lock it. Throw the crossbar and lash it. Now Odysseus, still in his beggar's clothes, asks to try the bow. The suitors refuse to allow a mere beggar to try where they have failed, but Penelope insists that the stranger be given his chance. The suspense is very great. By this act, Penelope has accepted her husband as a suitor. Eumaeus the swineherd hands Odysseus the bow and tells the nurse to retire with Penelope and the maids to the family chambers, the harem, and to bolt the doors. Odysseus had earlier told Telemachus to remove the suitors' weapons from the great hall. Now he takes the bow. And Odysseus took his time, turning the bow, tapping it, every inch, for borings that termites might have made while the master of the weapon was abroad. Their suitors were now watching him, and some jested among themselves, A bow lover, dealer in old bows. Maybe he has one like it at home, or has an itch to make one for himself. See how he handles it, the sly old buzzard. And one disdainful suitor added this, May his fortune grow an inch for every inch he bends it. But the man skilled in all ways of contending, satisfied by the great bow's look and heft, like a musician, like a harper, when with quiet hand upon his instrument he draws between his thumb and forefinger a sweet new string upon a peg, so effortlessly Odysseus in one motion strung the bow, and slid his right hand down the cord and plucked it, so the taut gut vibrating hummed and sang its swallow's note. In the hushed hall it smote the suitors, and all their faces changed. Then Zeus thundered overhead, one large crack for a sign, and Odysseus' laugh within him that the son of crooked-minded Cronus had flung that omen down. He picked one ready arrow from his table where it lay bare. The rest were waiting still in the quiver for the young men's turn to come. He knocked it, let it rest against the hand grip, and he drew the string and grooved butt of the arrow, aiming it from where he sat upon the stool. Now flashed arrow from twanging bow, clean as a whistle, through every socket ring, and grazed not one, the thud with heavy brazen head beyond. Then quietly Odysseus said, Telemachus, the stranger you welcomed in your hall has not disgraced you. I did not miss, neither did I take all day stringing the bow. My hand and eye are sound, not so contemptible as the young men say. The hour has come to cook their lordships' mutton, supper by daylight, other amusements later with song and harping that adorn a feast. He dropped his eyes and nodded, and Prince Telemachus, true son of King Odysseus, belted his sword on, clapped his hand to his spear, and with a clink and glitter of keen bronze stood by his chair, in the forefront near his father. Thus ends Book 21 of the Odyssey.